All right, let's dive right into this surreal explainer. But hey, quick warning before we really get going. This isn't just some story you can passively sit back and consume. The source material we're looking at today actively breaks the fourth wall, and the sheer act of watching this explainer, of witnessing these concepts, it might just change you. It's a text that literally behaves like a living thing.
Right off the bat, this introduction sets the exact stakes of our journey. Notice that final word there, accomplices. We aren't just observing a narrative here, we are active participants in a world that is entirely driven by transformative desire. The text is basically warning us that the book has been waiting for our specific hands, or, well, our specific attention. Because this source material is wonderfully abstract and nonlinear, we're going to use a quick roadmap to keep us anchored. We'll start by welcoming you to the threshold, then look at the three voices of desire, the rules of transformation, the changeless Empress, what it means to be becoming the book, and finally, we'll wrap up with the unwritten collapse. Okay, Section 1. Welcome to the threshold, the architecture of the impossible. Let's just take a second to ground ourselves in the physical, or maybe metaphysical, setting where this abstract journey actually takes place. Welcome to the threshold. And wow, this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of the imagination at work here. Think about it. We're in a place where walls actually listen, where ink on a page literally turns into insects that can crawl up your arm, and where corridors end in gardens that suddenly open into rooms you've already left. It's this overlapping empire where geography and time are folded entirely in on themselves. To keep us somewhat grounded, the text follows our protagonist, a poet, chronologically through a single, living day. We move from the pre-dawn hour of the tiger, tracking the sun and the shadows, all the way to the deep night of the hour of the dog. This gives us a really solid spine to hold on to, as the magic and the transformations just compound hour by hour. Moving into Section 2, three voices of desire, Sappho, Ovid, and Sei Shōnagon. Now, what's really fascinating about this world is that it's governed by a thematic triad. You have these three legendary authors acting as the literary ghosts, writing the actual rules of this reality. This comparison perfectly contrasts how these masters shape the rules of the empire. Sappho brings this intense, fragmented longing. Ovid brings fluid shapes and constant slippage, and Sei Shōnagon grounds the whole thing with clinical, precise observation. And just look at how their domains manifest in something as simple as a bed. Sappho's is narrow and hard, made for weeping over lost love. Ovid's is stuffed with swan down, where bodies are constantly shifting and deceiving. And Shōnagon's? It's a profoundly uncomfortable futon, designed specifically so you stay incredibly aware of your physical reality. Section 3. The rules of transformation, when metaphor becomes anatomy. In the thresholds, poetic madness isn't just pretty language. It's treated as objective reality, perfectly mirroring Sei Shōnagon's clinical role in the text. Let's look at how this actually works. This taxonomy shows us that a broken heart isn't a metaphor. It's a physical, dissectable truth. We're talking actual structural cracks appearing in the muscle tissue. If you're consumed by fire, you literally smell like a snuffed candle. And butterflies in your stomach? Yeah, you're dealing with a minor insect infestation emerging from your throat. Language here has very real, physical consequences. The text outlines very specific types of metamorphosis. While some transform as a punishment from petty gods, or as an escape route, or simply out of pure desire, it's the literary type that is the most dangerous. Why? Because it's contagious. You transform simply by reading about it. The words literally enter your bloodstream. And so here is the absolutely crucial point. In this empire, a transformation cannot finish without someone watching. By watching this explainer, you are acting as the witness. You're taking on the weight of the change, sealing the transformations taking place within the text. You are the final necessary ingredient in someone else's becoming. Which brings us to Section 4, the changeless Empress, the axis of the empire. Let's step into the very center of the palace at noon, the hour of the horse, where we finally meet the ruler who is hoarding all of this change. This contrast really highlights the Empress's tragic dilemma. While everyone else is fluid and shifting, she is the completely stable axis that everything rotates around. She collects frozen transformations, like people who have turned into cherry trees or mirrors or doors, because she is the only being in the threshold completely incapable of experiencing change herself. She's been exactly the same for 3,000 years, and honestly, she is desperately jealous of her subjects. Section 5. becoming the book, the performance at the hour of the rooster. This brings us right to the climax of the day. The poet is ordered to perform her manuscript of transformations for the Empress, who fully intends to add the poet to her collection once the performance is complete.
The poet writes out this step-by-step ritual, making the abstract concept of magical metamorphosis feel like a tangible, highly dangerous instruction manual. You have to speak your desire aloud because words are spells. You have to surrender, and crucially, you must have a witness. If you stop halfway, you are trapped between forms forever.
And in front of the entire court, as the poet reads her words aloud, the spell takes hold. She literally transforms from flesh into a living book. Light pours from her shoulders, her heart becomes visible, pumping ink instead of blood, and her fingers unfold into crisp paper pages. She achieves exactly what she thought she wanted: immortality as pure text.
But just as the Empress steps forward to claim the book, we discover a loophole. The poet's lover shouts her secret true name. As Ovid tells us, a true name is a hook in the soul. It tethers you. It pulls the poet back just enough so that she doesn't fully calcify into an object. Instead, she manages to invent a new, impossible form that is permanently fluid. She becomes a being of both text and flesh simultaneously. She is the transformation into transformation itself. Finally, Section 6, the unwritten collapse, teaching the unteachable. Having achieved this impossible hybrid state, the newly formed poet book is approached by the Empress with a very dangerous request.
The miserable, fixed Empress literally begs the poet to teach her how to change. In the deep night, the poet agrees, following these strict instructions. You have to start incredibly small, just imagining a single hand becoming a river. But the most important instruction is the very last one. If the Empress changes, the stable center of the empire vanishes. You must accept that you might destroy absolutely everything.
3,000. That is the number of years the Empress has remained totally fixed in place. That is 3 millennia of pressure, and it breaks all at once. Guided by the poet, the Empress finally surrenders, transforming her rigid, unyielding hand into a flowing, rushing river.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core philosophy of the text. The moment the Empress fully surrenders and dissolves into water, the stable center holding the empire together is just gone. The palace crumbles. But Sappho asks us, from right within the text, what if collapse is really just another word for transformation? What if the empire simply wants to become something else?
The overlapping empire completely collapses into a realm known as the unwritten. It's a place of terrifying freedom, a realm of pure chaos and potential where abandoned stories and unacted desires exist freely without ever having to find a rigid ending. The highly structured empire just dissolves into absolute, unwritten silence.
And that brings us to the end of our journey today. As this explainer completes its own transformation into your memory, having made you the ultimate witness, we leave you with the very question the book asks its readers. What is the name beneath your name? The one you had before society gave you a role. If someone shouted it into the void right now, would you recognize it? And more importantly, would you come? Think about that for a bit. Thank you so much for being an accomplice today.